Dear Cameron and Ian and colleagues, thanks for all your preparation and for your care and assistance to arrange this great conference, and for giving me the opportunity to connect with a group of friends that care for the earth and for the future. I will present a paper which is part of a Future Earth project led by Laszlo Zonai, University of Corvinus, Budapest. 2 years ago we had a joint paper on business ethics in the Anthropocene, and 1 year ago I presented some of these ideas in Tel Aviv. This paper addresses the need for a land ethics within the context of economics and commercialization effects. The central proposition are that land has been reduced to a commodity, and land is a very broad concept, as you will see, to be exchanged as any other commodity on the market. And without a proper land ethics and ecological consciousness, there will be no sustainable earth. My suggestion and conclusion is that economics has to broaden its framework to include the study of the physical reality, historical sciences, biology, and political and ecological economics. The challenge is to create new, progressive social institutions that respects nature, future generation, and the common good. And you know, everybody, the problem. It is the massive human impact. We are in a new geological age or time, the Anthropocene. And one result is that cultivated land has decreased drastically due to development, economic progress, new highways, shopping centers, housing, factories, deforestation. We are continually and gradually eating up more and more fruitful land. Natural resources are vulnerable and limited, but the economists, the mainstream economists, have to a large degree treated natural resources as unlimited, but this is a false and dangerous assumption. The decrease of fruitful land has many implications, not the least from a food production perspective. Mr. José Graciano da Silva, Director General of FAO, says that the multiple roles of soils often go unnoticed. Soils don't have a voice, and few people speak out for them. They are of a silent ally in food production. And what is land? Should land be treated merely as commodity and rent, reduced to rent? To broaden up the mainstream economic perspective, I will introduce different perspectives. And from a Jewish Christian view, land is space. The word makom for place means standing room. Nothing can take place, farming, manufacturing, commerce, or just living without space. The concept of selling land, as we today do, did not exist in the Bible except as a crime. The maximum lease was 50 years. And Leviticus 25, the third book of Moses, I read, "The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is mine. What was sold shall remain with the purchaser until the year of Jubilee. In the Jubilee it shall be released, and the property shall be returned." This concept of land goes far beyond any market value. It's a covenant a holy trinity between God, the earth, and man. So, based upon the scripture, land could not be bought and sold as any other commodity. The other perspectives, which is a strong contrast to the contemporary view, is put forward of John Stuart Mill. In his Grand Oeuvre, Principles of Political Economy, he states that the essential principle of property is to assure that all persons has a right to what they have produced by their labor. But this principle cannot apply to raw material of the earth. If the land derived its productive power wholly from nature, it would be a hate of injustice to let the gift of nature be engrossed by a few individuals. No man made the land. It is the original inheritance of the whole species. When land is not cultivated, it is good reason. There's no good reason that it in general can be given for being private property at all. Some of my friends said yesterday he became a socialist, this good man. As many of you know, this time we know too all well the development. And Polanyi framed it a great transformation. Economics was liberated from ethics. Economics developed from being embedded in a society to swallow the society. We went from a society with small markets to a market society, where economic thinking continually was extended to new areas of life. New domains and activities are marketized, commercialized, and commodified. The smart manager knows the dollar price of everything, and this is also all he knows. A contrast perspective is ecological economics, and Herman Daly, former director in the World Bank, criticizes the mainstream economists and suggests the need for an ecological perspective. It implies to treat limited resources with a frugal attitude. And this is very important for economists. Frugality is more important than efficiency. Daily criticize economists to be an idealistic and abstract science which ignores the physical world. So, my big question is aligned with what everybody has said today. Which values are at stake? Putting a price on the good things in life can corrupt them. Economic values may corrupt dignity, informal exchange, mutual obligation, altruism, and law. Markets can crowd out, that is, destroy moral values. And what is the commercialization effect? Yes. If certain goods may be bought and sold, we decide that it is appropriate to treat them as commodities, as instruments of profit and use. I will present a case from Canada about buying the right to kill. Walrus is a massive defenseless animal which are easy prey for hunters, and the population was decimated in the 19th century. Canada banned walrus hunting with one exception in the 1920s, because Inuits had hunted walrus for almost 5,000 years as part of their subsistence. But in the 1990s, Inuit leaders proposed for the Canadian government to sell the right to kill some of their quota of walrus to big game hunters. The number of walruses killed would remain the same. The Inuit would collect the money, serve as guides to trophy hunters, supervise the kill, and keep the meat and skins as they had always done. This would be a perfect win-win situation. The social utility would increase for all. Each trophy hunter would pay $6,000 for the right to kill. Which values are at stake? A perverse desire with a market value of $6,000 will be fulfilled. Does the Inuit's right to kill walruses corrupt its meaning when selling it to outsiders? The Canadian government's purpose was to pay respect to the Inuits' way of life, but the Inuits converted the right into a source of income. Who am I to judge the big game hunters' desires as perverse? When the net result is that the social utility and general welfare is increased as measured by standard economics. In my opinion, it requires a debate to resolve these competing moral judgments. Let us look more closely at some of the hidden assumptions behind this way of thinking. The first assumption is that marketization is neutral. Marketization does not alter the meaning of the goods. That is, it's subjecting a good to market exchange or incentivize an activity does not alter its meaning. Versus a transactional view implies a degradation of important moral values like dignity and intrinsic values of nature. Such a degradation ultimately leads to more exploitation and violence. The second hidden assumption is that economists assume that virtues are a scarce resource to be economized. The more we act out of altruistic or love motives, the more will those virtues be depleted. I remember what you said, Cameron. So the economists argue we should save those important virtues to our family, not spend them for the common good. But, according to Aristotle and Rousseau, virtues are to be cultivated in practice. Without any use of cultivation, volunteer work, virtues will be depleted. Use it or lose it. So, my fundamental question are, do we have to choose between social utility and the good, noble life? Noblesse oblige. Should everything be up for sale? What about land? What about buying the right to kill a walrus? And my suggestion, a land ethics which give land intrinsic value. And I can support my thinking with Leopold's land ethics, deep ecological thinking, developing ecological conscience. And one of my favorite is Aldo Leopold. And as Susan talked about today, the window to another animal, and that was the transformation in Aldo Leopold's life. I might talk about that later. But the sum of his ethics is that an act is right if it preserves the integrity, stability, and beauty of natural ecosystems. It means that not only economic values should count, ecological and aesthetical values have the same worth. And what is also interesting with Cameron's talk, Leopold stresses the importance of developing a mental image of land as a biotic community, but also as a pyramid. And I could say some words more about Leopold, but the time now, what?
6 minutes.
Yeah, good. Land for Leopold is to be understood in a wide sense, include animals, plants, insects, soil, atmosphere. And land is a fountain of energy. flowing through a circuit of soils, plants and animals. Food chains are the living channels which conduct energy upward. Death and decay return it to the soil. A similar perspective is formulated and structured by the Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss, Deep Ecology. And his motto is, live a rich life with simple means, simple in means, rich in purpose. And this was his personal cabin. He lived at least 10 years at that cabin, trying to minimize his time in the university, even he was the first professor in philosophy in Norway for third at all. And he had a major influence, but most of his time he used in this very simple cabin high up in the mountain. So he walked his talk. And the main hypothesis in deep ecology is self-realizations for all beings. And the flourishing of human and non-human life on Earth has intrinsic value. Richness and diversity of life forms are values in themselves. And to Anthony, that spoke very nice about prosperity, the ideological change is mainly that of appreciating life quality, dwelling in situation of intrinsic values, rather than adhering to a high standard of living. And I would say also, and I'm proud of that, it's a new perspective also that is called integral economy, put forward by Pope Francis in an encyclical letter in 2015 with the nice title, Care for Our Common Home. Integral ecology has its essential values: common good, justice between generations, self-restraint and frugality. The letter promotes that we should develop an education which creates ecological citizenship and universal solidarity. We should reject the beliefs that humans are given dominance over the earth because every creature has its own value. The natural environment is a collective good, the patrimony of all humanity, and everyone has to be responsible for it. So then, the big question, how to implement land ethics. And I think we should redirect the field of economics to include the study of ecological, political, biological and historical sciences in order to decommodificate important areas of life. We should actively work for that land is much more than rent. The concept of land needs to be widened and revitalized. We should include the study of the physical part of land as an essential part of economics. And we should develop the faculty of perception, and in particular compassion, as important goals of the business curriculum. And my last question is, how about outdoor activities in business schools? Thank you.